Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and today on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you Hide and Go Seek by Andrew Garve, one of the many excellent Harper novels of suspense. This one, copyright 1966 by Harper and Row. So, full disclosure, I am a major fanboy when it comes to Andrew Garve. He can do no wrong in my book. I have not read any one of his many novels that has not wowed me or just made me admire him and appreciate him and be intimidated by his ability to tell a great story, well plotted, with lots of twists, with good characters, all in a very tight 200 pages that you just race through, from beginning to end. So a little bit about Andrew Garve, who is sadly under-talked about these days, I think. And as with my other videos, I'm hoping that just talking about some of these writers from the 40s, 50s, and 60s will help bring them, into conversation again. Andrew Garve was the pseudonym of Paul Winterton, who also wrote under the pseudonyms of Roger Bax and Paul Summers. He was most prolific under the Garve name, and I think there were maybe 4 or 5 books under the Bax name, and I think 4 books under the Summers name. What is really remarkable about Garve, and this is what you'll read if you do any sort of internet research on him at all, is the thing that I think he's most widely admired for, in addition to telling a hell of a story, is that he never wrote the same book twice. So no series characters. Every plot was fresh and new and different and had its own unique twist on things. I think I could divide the Garve books into a few basic categories. One is sort of a typical crime story, right? Where a crime happens and you have to find out who did it. Another is sort of an adventure or slash spy novel, very often with a kind of a Russian setting or a Russian plot happening somewhere, either in the foreground or in the background. And then there are some books where he makes his main character a rotter, a bad guy, a sociopath. And you spend the book following this rotter and the people who are pursuing him and hope that he gets his just desserts. And Hide and Go Seek fits into that last category. There's another book that I can recommend by Garve with a rotter as the star, and that one is called, let me remember the name of it, The Megstone Plot, and that one is terrific too. So the plot setup is quite simple. A roue, a sociopath, from England, on vacation, on holiday in Norway, meets and seduces an innocent young woman, and then disappears, having had his fun. And meanwhile, back home, back at the ranch in England, he is engaged to a wealthy woman, and one day he looks up, and the woman he seduced in Norway is on his doorstep, saying that she is pregnant and she wants him to do right by her, which sends him into pure sociopathic mode as to how he is going to manage the situation, get rid of her, and not blow his engagement, because really, he's only in it for the money. So what I really like about the first chapter of this book, and in other Garve books too, is that as you're getting to know the character, you just see these little twinges of his sociopathy. Garve just gives you these little hints that maybe he's not the nicest guy. And then by the time you get 25, 30, 40 pages in, he's not nice. And not only is he not nice, he's probably quite bad. And the story takes off from there. I don't want to give any spoilers. So I've had this experience with Garve in the past that I'll get to some point in the book, maybe 40, 50%, and I'm thinking, this one isn't maybe as good as some of the other ones. I mean, it's good and I'm enjoying it, but it feels like the plot is a little too simple or a little straightforward. There hasn't been a lot of monkey wrenches thrown into the works. And then, kaboom! Garve lowers the boom and he sticks his finger in your brain and goes, he really muddies up and complicates the plot in a great way, a fun way, something that you never expected. And I had that moment where I thought, Garve, you've done it to me again. You've lulled me into this false sense of security, and then you've completely taken me down another path. And as a reader, I love that. I love when I don't see what's coming. And with Garve, you think you do, but you don't. An interesting thing about Garve that I find is he's so English that I always have to look up the meanings of words. I think I'm pretty good with vocabulary, but I always end up having to look up things when I read a Garve because I just think, what does this word mean? And I have to know because the plot is based on it. So a couple of the words I learned from this one is, English usage, UK usage. Lode, Lode, which in English parlance means a waterway. Mere, M-E-R-E, noun, which is basically a pond. Drover, and there are a few other ones too. A lot of Garve's books have kind of a water setting. They take place near the water or on the water, on ships, or there are ships in the book, and so there's some terminology that has to go with the water. It must have been, one of his hobbies. But I find that in these, novels of suspense, like I said, I always have to look a few things up before I understand what's going on. And I guess it just sort of keeps me humble. So I won't say too much more, except that if you have not discovered Andrew Garve, you are in for a real treat. He's so much fun to read. He is always enjoyable. I love that in general you can expect poetic justice or moral justice in his books. In fact, there's a blurb on this book that describes it as thoroughly amoral, unethical, and enjoyable. And I think that's a great description. Not referring to Garve himself, but rather to our lead character, Alan Hunt, who is, just a very charming bad guy. And let's face it, we've all known sociopaths in our lives, and they can be very charming and very manipulative. And they really can get the better of you if you don't know what their tricks are. And so while I don't want people like that in my life, it's fun to read about them. If you're looking for other Garve books to read, I can recommend all of them. Some favorites of mine are No Tears for Hilda. That one is great. The Far Sands has a really interesting setup, really interesting resolution. They're all good. There's no such thing as a bad Garve. And I suspect if you're a reader like I am, once you find him, you are going to want to devour more. In fact, I have all of his books under all of his pseudonyms. And I kind of dole them out. I parcel them out because my tendency is to want to read all of them. But what I do is I save them because occasionally I read a clunker or something that's really bad. And when that happens, I think I really need now something that I know is going to be great to make up for that crappy reading experience that I just had. And I know that when I pick up a book by Garve, that's exactly what I'm going to get, is a great, enjoyable, fast, and fun read. So please check out Andrew Garve. I can't recommend anybody higher than I recommend him. I don't think books like his are really being written much anymore. I do think there are probably some decent comparisons that could be made to James Patterson, although, oh God, let me not get started on James Patterson. But, James Patterson has a formula at this point, and so once you've read a few of his books, you absolutely know what all the other books are going to be like. But you'll never have that with Garve. And so go Garve is all I can say. And I'll be back with more Garve and more Forgotten Mysteries when I have great books to recommend to you, or at least interesting books to talk about. Thank you and have a good night.